Hi friends, hope you're all doing very good today, and thank you once again for joining today's session. It's perfect timing right now. It's 4:30 p.m. in New Zealand, and I guess it's time, as we told, it's perfect time in India as well. So thank you once again for joining this session in YouTube Live. This is our, oops, I can hear myself. Yeah. So today is another YouTube live series. We have been talking about the different way of teaching people in YouTube live, as well as we are engaging people from Udemy and many sort of platforms. So I'm keep telling there is a new platform which is also going to engage a different way of teaching people. So I think that's something coming new. So just hold tight. I'll be revealing that pretty soon. So at the moment we have YouTube as well as Udemy, and I'm trying to help people to just see what is the best way that I can engage everybody. So in today's YouTube live, as you all know, we are going to discuss something that is going to be exactly what you have raised as a question earlier. So if you have already not raised any question on the link that I shared before, please do share some of the questions over here on the chat, on the YouTube live chat, so that I can also answer the questions if we really have some time after this session. So as you all know, once again, thank you very much for joining this session. My name is Karthik, and you might have accidentally or maybe seen some of my videos in YouTube as well as in Udemy. So I am passionate on testing. I've been testing applications for almost like 14 years now, and yeah, the ages is keep increasing. I'm getting old now, obviously, and I can see that a lot of testing trends are pretty much encouragingly increasing right now, but still the basic idea of testing is still the same. It is exactly the same testing technologies baseline, like identifying the element in UI, performing an operation, and asserting the value from the UI. That's it. That's how it is, at least in the UI front of testing. But so many things have changed, like how you customize the testing in terms of API testing, in terms of database, in terms of microservices, or in terms of Docker containers, and how you provision your app and how you test the services like that. So those things have really changed. But yes, the underlying idea of testing applications still remains the same. And that's what really excites me to see how these new technologies are really increasing the way the testing can be done in a much sophisticated fashion right now. Well, as I said, once again, thank you for joining. So we'll jump into the questions that you have asked on the link that I shared earlier on the Google Docs. So the questions that you have asked is, I received almost like 15 to 20 categories of questions, and I have just categorized them into 3 categories. And so totally out of like 60 plus questions, I just categorized them into 3, because mostly some of the questions are like redundant, and some questions are kind of fitting into the category that I'm going to be categorizing. So all these questions are categorized into these 3 categories, as you can see. One is the programming, another one is testing, and another category is very interesting, which is Cypress. A lot of people are really talking about Cypress, and they're also starting to see that Cypress is gaining popularity. They starting to realize that. So we are gonna discuss about that as well in this particular video. So you can see there are these 3 categories. So mostly these questions are something you would have already asked me on the Udemy, or you would have asked me the questions in the YouTube comments. But yes, these questions are kind of getting repeated. So I thought even the question that you have asked in the Google Docs is also pretty much close to what I have been keep hearing. So we are going to discuss about all of them this time. On the programming front, we have the most repeated question, which is C# versus Java. Which one is better? Where to start learning if you're pretty new to automation? And what is how to do a better art of coding? And there is like how to write a logical coding and what is the best approach while starting to write a code or a test framework. What are the different best approaches available, and is there any resource available on the programming? And similarly, on the testing side, many of them have asked like unit testing versus UI testing, and how to reduce the flaky UI test automation code, and what are the common errors anybody can encounter on the UI testing, and rewriting the existing framework, how much time will it take, and how to start rewriting the existing framework. And then about Cypress versus Selenium, a lot of people ask like, what is the future of Cypress? And Cypress seems to be working better in React application, but Selenium seems to be not. And how to learn Cypress, and will Cypress overtake Selenium? So you can see these are some of the Cypress based questions. I have never seen any other tools like Puppeteer or Playwright or Protractor on that matter, but this tool seems to be very interesting to many people, and I'm keep looking at the same kind of questions over here. So as that said, these are the categories of questions. Let's get started and talk each of them one by one. So the first one is programming. So in this question, I really start with this particular code. I really like this code because, as you can see what Martin Fowler has said, any fool can write code that a computer can understand, but only a good programmer can write a code that human can understand. This is really a very good code because it really inspires to see like, because we can keep writing the code any way that we want, but only thing is that code should be understood by everybody who is going to read your code. Even let's say if you go to a new job where you're going to see this test automation code which is written by somebody else, or maybe somebody else is going to join within your team and he's going to read your code, they should understand as well. It should not be very complex, but it should be understood by everybody who is going to watch or read your code. So that's what is very important while writing the code itself. Well, as that said, I'll just begin with C# versus Java, and then we'll talk about this programming, like art of coding and stuff. So the first one is C# versus Java. I've been talking about C# versus Java a lot, and even with some of my webinars with Joe Colentino, I spoke that C# is the best programming language in terms of automation, pretty much close to Java. And I also told that there are many reasons why C# has to be chosen as the programming language of choice for automation instead of just leaving it behind. And some of the supporting points for that is this. C# is now cross-platform. We all know that because of .NET Core. It's evolving pretty much. A lot of people are really going into C# right now. So it's high time for anybody who is going to learn a new programming language or who is very well in Java should adapt C#. And C# is highly robust with busting new language features. You can see every new release of C#, like C# 8 has a lot of new features. C# 9 is also on the way. It also has a lot of new features. So it's really, really cool to start looking into C#. And if you are working with Azure's or Azure DevOps, you might have seen that a lot of platforms are tightly integrated with the C# and Visual Studio of Microsoft, which is really good. So if you write any code in C# and if you want to work with microservices or the Docker containers of Azure, it's much, much easy in C# and Microsoft platforms because they are tightly integrated. That's another power of C# itself. And a lot of different tools like Selenium, Appium, Xamarin.UI Test, WinApp Driver, Ranorex, Test Complete, and many other tools supports C# as their programming language. It's not like there are only few language or few tools which actually support this language. Not like that. Actually, many different tools support C# as their programming language, which is pretty cool. I actually missed one more tool, which is Test Complete. Test Complete also, I missed this Test Project, which actually supports exporting their code in C# programming language. We already discussed about it. And coming back to Java, of course, Java is cross-platform. We all know that. We have been learning Java because it's the nature itself is cross-platform. And it's pretty old and mature. And C# copied Java. So Java is going to look pretty much like C#, and C# looks pretty much like Java. It also has best IDE like IntelliJ IDE, NetBeans IDE, or Eclipse IDE, and there may be any number of IDEs right now. Even VS Code support it. That's pretty cool. And it supports many testing tools as well, like Selenium, Appium, and I think Ranorex and Test Complete do supports the Java programming language as well. And many cloud providers do support Java, but not as extensive as Azure and Visual Studio combo. But yes, there is a support on that. Well, as I said, the question was like, can I go with C# for automation testing? Why should I just stick with Java? Well, I would say I recommend people to go with C# and really give a thought about it, because all the different tech stack that you see on the or all the testing automation tool stack that you see on Java does really exist in C# as well. So please go with C#. C# has a rich variety of features which you can really obtain from Java as well. So C# is a good tool for your good language for your question. The next one is art of coding. Yes, so regarding the Martin Fowler's comment on the code, or the codes on the code, I really like this art of coding itself, and thanks for asking this question. Well, the question originally was, how do I know the art of coding? Well, the coding is an art, of course we know that, but it can only be learned if we practice it day in and day out instead of just doing it at work, right? I have seen a lot of people who start working in automation. They do try learning automation code at work. They start writing the coding. They do only at work. But once they go home, see what happens. They get into their usual business at home, and eventually they lose track of it because of so many distractions we all have, and they wouldn't be able to spend a lot of time on improving their coding. So they try improving the coding at their work, but problem with testers like us is we have to go write the code, automation code at office, and we also have to do manual testing, right? So tell me how many of us do just automation testing at work? We should be, in some reason, or in many cases, we'll be pulled to do the manual testing, and then we were asked to do just the manual testing for a lot of time, and then again they repeat to some automation testing, and then we again get into the automation testing. So that's how it is. So we cannot really learn coding at work. So it's just that we have to practice it in our time to do the coding itself. And I'll come back to the questions, Mohit. I could see your questions, and Rahul, your questions as well. So just give me a second. I'll come back to your questions on the YouTube live comments. And then regarding the art of coding, the next question was, and the next point I really think is like, there is a developer within us, and that should be invoked by the continuous training and learning. Only if we do that, we could actually see how we can improve the art of coding. So there is no shortcuts for doing it. It's just practice. And there was another question. I can really see that this question is also coming through a lot of times on the comments. People are asking like how to improve our logical coding. Well, coding should be logical. If not, there is no reason why it should exist. You should write a logical coding, but we can only improve the logic by separating the big problem into smaller chunk, which is logical chunks, and then work on them in an agile concept, right? Pretty much like this. So every time you can see that while we start writing the code, if we take a big problem, then we think that, oh my God, this is going to be very big. We can't really or can actually work on that particular problem. So the better way is just break down them into smaller chunks and then work on them. So breaking down is again going to be like logically breaking down them, because I have seen many companies start doing the automation. They start doing automation with an automation framework concept directly, and then they integrate all sort of technology in that, something like web automation, mobile automation, API automation, database testing, everything within one framework, and they want it to be running. So if you think of this problem, it's a very big problem. Basically, it's a very big process. So if we take all of them together into one framework, it is going to be really, really hard. So the only way we can actually get into resolving this problem is breaking down them into multiple separate technologies. Of course, they are separate technologies, like web is different, mobile is different, API is different. Just make them smaller chunk, and within the web, just try to see within Selenium, go with the page object model, try to write a small POC, and then start doing it. And then similarly, start writing a small code, and then for the mobile, and then try to run that and see how it works. So this is how it should be separated, and then you can start writing it. And I also recommend try going through others' code in GitHub repos. It's a very good place right now to see others' code and how they are writing their code, like how they have splitted the code and how it is actually working, so that you get an idea of how to write the code. Because most of the time we try to see code which is written by our own team members, and that really gives us maybe a good inspiration to go into that. But actually, if you see the coding which is written by outside world, there are a lot of people who are really doing a great job in writing the code. So it's always better to just go through the GitHub repo. Or not, you can also create your own GitHub repo and see how it actually works. You can ask comments from the people. They can review your code if they can. And there was another question about the coding resource, like is there any coding resource available? Of course, within Execute Automation channel, there is only two. One is the C# automation testing, and another one is the TypeScript fundamentals. So these are the two programming language series that I actually released. And for C#, I actually covered many different framework development kind of stuff within my Udemy courses. But on the TypeScript, for the Puppeteer, for the Protractor, there is a course on TypeScript with Protractor, which does really have a great impact while writing the code. So these are the two programming language, but there are many different coding resources available on the internet, in Udemy, as well as in YouTube or Plural site. So you can go ahead and watch there. Obviously, I don't really have it, but the better places are to go and learn from there. And sometimes it is also better that you directly go into the actual language development page, go to the man page or the fact page, where you can learn a lot of documentations from the tools from there itself. And the next category is the testing category. And I could see there are some interesting questions coming on the comments. I think I should run this quickly and we can directly jump into the questions on the YouTube live itself. The next category is the testing category, where people are very much concerned about some of the questions, something like this. Unit testing level bug versus the UI testing bugs. Yes, in unit testing, we can cover a lot of bugs with better unit testing and coverage. There will be less bugs escapes to the QA itself. So the original question was, will good unit testing in the unit testing category itself, if it is done very well, will there be a less bug in UI testing, or whether UI testing covers a lot of bugs which unit testing won't? Well, there is always a give and take, right? So if there are a lot of unit testing done by your developers, supposedly, then there will be very less bug escapes to QA. But UI testing do uncover more issues related to the user acceptance testing and workflows, which unit testing may not cover at all. Because unit testing's code will be more focused toward one part of unit which the developers have created, but they won't actually cover a complete workflow. You might have seen that unit testing levels of testing is just, that's why it is called as a unit testing. It is not like a workflow testing. So whatever unit of code that the developer has written, that's the only place or a piece of code which will be covered by the developers, but not everything that you can actually get from your UI testing. Because within your UI testing, it becomes very, very handy, since it exercises almost UI, API, databases, all in one, pretty much like end users does, because that's exactly what a user does, right? You don't really have to do everything like API testing or database testing while you do an UI testing, because UI testing does cover everything within itself. But the problem of the UI testing itself is data sometimes, because we don't really have a very realistic test data. We always suffer to go with UI testing to be more realistic. But the good thing is you can actually achieve the same thing with the UI testing, provided you have a very good testing infrastructure. And then why UI testings are flaky and how to resolve this issue. You might have seen this every time while we start writing the test, UI testing fails. And what is the reason behind it? So why testings are flaky and how to resolve it? Well, of course, UI testings are flaky. We all know that, since they are super fragile due to various environmental issues like browsers, operating systems, network speed, and the application itself. And most of the time, the test which runs on your local machine may not be running on the remote machine, or maybe if you're running in Selenium Grid, probably the Docker container which runs your Selenium test may not be running as better test as in your local machine. So these kinds of problems will happen. So the only way to resolve is to ensure all the above are in good state, like browser, operating system, network speed, and applications are in good state. And most importantly, write a better automation code or make it as a framework of utilities to handle them. I mean, it doesn't matter that you write a framework, by the way, but it is always a good way or good place to start writing your code as a framework, and then make it more solid, because you test that particular piece of utility 100 times, and then you try to make it like an utility which can be used across your company, so that anybody who is going to use that utility don't really have to reinvent the wheel of what problems that you suffered, and then that will expand in multiple different utilities. For example, one of the questions even on the program and the testing people asked is what are the different types of error people will get in the UI testing? Because in Selenium, you know what error we always get? Element not found, right? We sometimes get no such element exist. So these problems happen because the element might not have rendered in the DOM, or maybe the element might have changed, or maybe the UI of that particular page was pretty slow. It took a lot of time before our timeout happened and the test gets failed. So in order to resolve this problem, you can do a series of operation. So these series of operation, while I was working in QTP like 14 years before, we used to do a lot of different way to handle any one of our test failures in the QTP, where we try to do something like rebooting or restarting our browsers, and then restarting the identification of the element. And then we also try to see if that particular element can be identified by waiting for a certain period of time, and then try to do the exact same operation 2 or 3 times to see if that particular element exists before we say that the element doesn't exist at all. So this way we can also try to achieve and see if it works or not. So, I mean, this is just an example, but better coding practices and better utilities can really improve whatever way that you can actually reduce the flaky test of our UI automation, instead of just trying to, just doing the same automation once again and failing. If it is failing, just putting the thread.sleep and making your test to keep running, or making it even more slower than the manual testing. Because I have seen many places people try putting a lot of thread.sleeps, and your automation testing will be so slow that even manual testing will be much faster than the automation testing. And slowly the automation testing becomes so obsolete because of a lot of failures. The confidence on the automation testing within the organization reduces, and the automation testing code that you wrote becomes like a zip file. It just sits within your source control, or maybe sits in somewhere within your machine, and nobody's going to use that. So those kind of things will really happens if we start writing the flaky code, and this is the way that you can really avoid them. Sorry about that. and then rewriting the existing code to the new framework. So if you want to rewrite, so the original question was how to rewrite a new framework altogether instead of just using the existing code from the framework. Well, while this happens, I mean, many times this will happen, it's better that you choose the latest tech which addresses the problem in the modern approach, which is a very good place because your already existing code is like obsolete right now. So now you have to choose the latest tech which has to address the problem in a more modern approach. For instance, your Selenium test, which is not doing better, probably you should now try to choose a different tool. For instance, Cypress, or maybe Puppeteer, or Protractor. So this way it will actually address some of your issues and start writing the code from the start. And then start writing with a POC instead of just writing everything from the ground up like a framework and then using it. And ensure all your conditions are exercised and met within your code. And keep running your new test in a continuous integration or continuous delivery to ensure the new test doesn't repeat the history, which is your existing code. So this way you can ensure that the existing code is also keep running, whereas your new code is also running on a CI/CD pipeline, and you are ensuring that the test is not actually, the test is actually working fine without any problem, so that you can keep building more and more test on the top of the new framework. So that's what is the way that you can rewrite your existing code to a new framework. And once again, while you try choosing a new framework, just ensure that your new code is also modern instead of just choosing a language which is going to be a burden for your whole team. Let's say if your whole team is very much familiar with Csharp or maybe Java or JavaScript, just approach with them, see if they can really go with the new tool that you're going to be choosing or the language that you're going to be choosing, and everybody is comfortable so that you can go with it. The next category, the last category of today's discussion is actually this one: Cypress versus Selenium. I can also see some of the questions coming in the YouTube live chat is I can probably answer that. What about Cypress? And do you recommend Cypress for Flutter app automation? And there were some other questions like, I think only the two questions are there on Cypress so far on the chat. But Cypress seems to be like gaining the momentum. A lot of people are really talking about it. But about Cypress, we already discussed about Cypress versus Selenium automation testing tool in our EA weekly long time before. It's going to be close to a month now, close to a year now. It's 11 months already. We talked about the Selenium versus Cypress, like how much differentiation it is. And we also talk about the introduction to an automation testing with Cypress.io like 2 years before. So yes, Cypress is gaining the momentum at the moment. A lot of people are really going to Cypress. At least they're not fully exercising the Cypress as like Selenium, but they're trying to see its fancy nifty tool. Everybody wants to give a shot and see how it works. And that's why Cypress is really gaining the momentum at the moment. And then there is another thing is about the Cypress versus Selenium is, what is the future of Cypress, and will Cypress overtake Selenium? Well, I guess the Cypress is a modern tool and they use modern tech. If it doesn't mean, but it doesn't mean that Cypress can really do something which Selenium cannot do, or Selenium can't do which Cypress can do, because Selenium 4 does support most of the things which Cypress does support, but in a bit harder way. The reason why I'm saying is I mean, Cypress does support the Chrome DevTool protocol itself, I mean, inbuilt. And the reason is being Cypress runs on the Chrome's environment in the Chrome ecosystem by itself. And that's the reason they could directly able to access the Chrome DevTool, and they could able to get the network protocols and all those stuff much easily. And that's exactly what Selenium 4 does as well. Selenium 4 does support the network APIs, and they can also emulate the network interpretation and interruptions and image interruptions and all those interceptions in Selenium 4 much easily. But the problem is Selenium 4 is still under beta stage. Maybe while they go live with a full version, there will be more new supports coming in, but I'm not very sure about that. But it is still under development. But Cypress is, yes, for the question, it seems like Cypress is doing very well right now. And Cypress does hear community feedback. They already they're already competing head to head with the Selenium in a very short span. Like Cypress came 3 years before, and Selenium is there for almost 9 years now. And you can still see that Cypress is very quickly competing Selenium in a very short span. And they also support cross-browser testing, Cypress, which is also very cool. I was keep complaining about Cypress that it is not doing the cross-platform support, but it seems like it is. And Cypress future seems to be shiny due to the modern app support, as I told you before. And ThoughtWorks has put Cypress in the adopt category, which means if you go to this particular link, you can see that Cypress, the ThoughtWorks have told to adopt this tool, because a lot of people are really trying to go with Cypress. So the future of Cypress seems to be shiny. That is the answer. But I cannot really tell that Cypress can overtake Selenium at this moment, which may be a wrong comment if I give it right now. But yes, it seems to be, Cypress seems to be having a very good future, as like Selenium in early days. But we should wait and see. Will it overtake Selenium is a very different story altogether, and I don't really want to comment that. And do I need to learn JavaScript for Cypress? This is another questions which people are trying to ask. Keep asking it. Well, I would say, of course, yes, since every time there happens an evolution to learn something new. Now I guess it's high time to learn JavaScript, not just for Cypress, but also for Testcafe, Puppeteer, Playwright, WebDriver, IO. All these tools does support JavaScript as a programming language. So it's better that you actually do give a thought of learning JavaScript as well, instead of just learning C# or Java. So yeah, that's the whole idea here. So I think that's it. This is what is the most frequently asked questions I have received so far. But I think now it's time for me to jump into the questions which I'm getting into the in the YouTube live, which people are asking. What is that? What are the features of protractors? And before even going into that, let's see. What is the other question? Yeah, Mohit has asked a question that I have no idea on Cypress, but I have idea on Appium and Selenium. Maybe his question is, can I do automation testing with Cypress? I should say, yes, you can very easily do the automation with Cypress, because Cypress is pretty good in terms of the tooling. It's very easy to start. Very easy to see how you can get started with your template of coding, because once you do npx cypress run command, it is going to create a template of codes. It's going to add templates of test cases for you, and you should see how you can run the test if you just do Cypress open. That's it. So this way you can see how easily you can start writing or using your Cypress code much easily compared to any other tools, because the whole idea of Cypress is to make the automation more simplified. So you should be able to get up to the speed of Cypress very short span of time. So there is no doubt on that. And Manoj has asked a question, which is, what is the future of Protractor? I guess Protractor library is not developing as quickly or as fast as Selenium WebDriver IO or Puppeteer or Playwright like that. It's going very, very slow. There is not a lot of bombarding new changes coming in. They made a recent upgrade. There was a library change, but it seems like the tool is slowing down a bit. Maybe the part of the reason is Protractor is very good in the Angular support, but Angular is not a very great UI application programming language of choice for developers, because now developers are seemingly moving towards React or Vue.js, and Angular seems to be going behind. So I guess that's the reason that the adaptation of the tool itself, I mean the Angular itself, is reducing. And why people should really give a lot of importance about Protractor is a different story. So I think that's the reason Protractor is also not picking up, and not everybody is giving a lot of importance to that. So I think the future, not very sure about it. We should just wait for a couple more years to see if the project really exists or not. And what is the other question? Is there any benefits to learn Spring Boot as the automation tester, or SDET? Spring Boot is really cool. I would say you should learn about Spring Boots, because Spring Boot has really changed the way you can actually write the dependency injections in your coding, which is all good. You should learn Spring Boot. Or there is another new tech like Micronauts, which is also doing very good in terms of the dependency injection and how you write the codes. So it all depends on which one you actually choose, Spring Boot or Micronaut. But the future is going to be pretty much good. But any new tech which is going to come is going to be based on the existing tech. So there won't be any wastage of your time that you have spent in learning it. So yes, it's always better to just keep learning it if you really have time on that. And Arvind has a question. He's asking, is DS and algorithms is a must to learn things? I don't think so, but it is probably for the interview. A lot of people do ask that question just to filter out people out of the crowd, but I think it's just for the interview. But other than that, you don't really use it anywhere in terms of your work. But this just gives you a bit more idea on how to write a logical code, the one which we discussed a couple of slides before. So yeah, that may help, but I don't know. Seriously, maybe it helps. And there is another question about, hi Karthik, can we know the roadmap of SDET? And we know that the road is bumpy. Can you give us the head up? What, for which roadmap is that? Roadmaps of SDET? I think SDET, everybody is going to turn into SDET pretty soon, because now the trend is more towards automation testing for some reason, even though the whole idea of testing itself is to improve the quality of the product. But now everybody's running behind the SDET and trying to ensure that they actually do just the automation testing. So the shiny path of SDET is always there. I think most of the company, because of this COVID season, many companies are asking everybody to become SDET for some reason. I have heard about some of these service-based company. I don't really want to name those companies, but many companies are asking everybody to do a lot of certifications just to become like an SDET, so that they get more clients from on site, and that way that improve them to become like a SDET. I don't think so. So yeah, the future of SDET is pretty shiny, to your question, and for sure a lot of people are actually trying to learn programming and different tools so that they can sustain in the market. At least you know what is happening right now on this COVID season. The future seems to be a bit blurry. It's not just because of the SDET, It's because of the economy and how the world is moving because of the COVID. So Selenium gonna support dev tools. So now it's difficult for Cypress, right? Selenium may pick up as it is used to do widely, and Selenium is adopting W3C. What is your thought? Which is the Arjun's question. Of course, yes, as I told you, Selenium 4 does support dev tools, but in a hard way. That is the only reason why Selenium is still lagging a bit. But once there is going to be a very seamless APIs, a fluent API kind of thing, probably these problems will be resolved. And again, we can't compete Cypress versus Selenium in a straight head-to-head way. We can probably compete in terms of the adaptation, but we really can't compare the tech stack because they two are working with a completely different protocol level while they access the UI element. So we still can't compare. Even if you go to the Cypress website, Cypress CEO, Cypress developers, they say that we can't compare Cypress with Selenium directly because they both are of different architecture. But yes, Cypress cannot. Selenium don't really have to overtake Cypress because it is already ahead of Cypress, because a lot of people are still using Selenium. It is not just the people who are really using Selenium. If you see most of the companies like Test Project, Catalan Studio, and many different tools of that matter actually uses Selenium library as their baseline library to run their tool, which is the power of Selenium itself, which Cypress can't at the moment because Cypress library is too intrinsic and you cannot actually extend Cypress to build another tool because Cypress itself is more like a tool right now. Whereas Selenium is just an API library which actually can be extended by any other libraries. And that's the power which I have already told many times in my other videos, that that's the power of Selenium itself. And that's exactly is the power of Puppeteer or Playwright because these tools also act as an API and they can be extended in many different angles and many different levels. And a lot of people are trying to build tools on the top of it. I spoke with the developers of the testing manager of Playwright from Microsoft, and there seems to be a lot of exciting things coming. I probably may be releasing the video if the author come to me back and they tell me some good information on that. But yeah, this is for now. But it seems like yes, the Playwright has a very good future as well. And the next question is, Protractor won't support React.js application automation. I doubt, Manoj, it does supports, because at the end of the day, all the elements which is rendered is on the browser is going to be DOM element of HTML. So for sure, Protractor should be supporting React application. And I think I have also automated a React application in Protractor with TypeScript in my Udemy course. So you should go ahead and watch there if you have already the Udemy for Business account. It's something you can avail for free, where we already talked about that. So it's for sure it will execute. So there is no doubt on that. There's a question from Jos. It is, Cypress dashboard is recommended for CI with Jenkins, or is it better to use Mocha report? Well, Cypress dashboard is more towards giving you an way to see how you're actually executing your test in CI/CD environments, which gives you more realistic reports while you run the test on parallel, while your scenarios run in parallel, and in which CPUs or which computers it runs, and if your code is being checked into GitHub and how it has been executed, and it directly talks with GitHub's APIs, and even with GitHub Actions, you can see how the test actually runs and how the report is going to be generated. It's not just test report, but it is the report of the test execution in multiple machines, which is not something Mocha report can actually do for you. But because Mocha report is more towards a report of that particular session's report. So they are completely two different things, Josh, so don't confuse about them. There is another question from Srihari. It says, hi, I am having experience in Selenium with Java. Is it good to start learning Python with a robot framework next? Seriously, I have not given any thought about robot frameworks so far. I have not even created any single video on robot frameworks. But do you really need to have another framework on the top of another framework? For instance, Selenium does support Python. So why can't you just extend your codings with Python with Selenium directly instead of using another framework like robot framework? Even though I understand that framework has a lot of inbuilt methods to do support some of the complex operations that you can do on the UI. But it is better that you can explore the code directly from the robot framework. You can go to the GitHub, see how the method is being written because it's open source. And you can extend the code if you want, if you like, in your Selenium's Python code instead of just using another tool. I mean, just give a thought about it. That way you can even improve your coding practices even more. That's what we just discussed in the slide as well. And there is another question, which is, what is the best way to resolve the stale element exceptions? I've tried creating generic method using fluent wait, but still the exception happens. What is the way to resolve it? Something like that. I guess the only way that you can probably resolve this issue, as I told you on the flaky UI of the slide while we were discussing, is you should probably put a better way of weighting your application's UI. The only way that you can do that as well is using custom Selenium controls. I mean, again, it seems to be like a crazy idea, but I have extended the Selenium library itself by scrapping it, or maybe extending the Selenium library to own custom controls. So if you do a custom controls of Selenium, you can write your own methods and you can write your own fluent operations with custom controls in Selenium. And then you can see how you can reduce these kinds of problems. I mean, I'm still not marketing my courses here, but I just want to give you a headshot to see. I mean, just go and see in that course, like how the Selenium custom controls are built. That will surely and definitely help you while you build a framework, and you can reduce these kind of exceptions that you are getting. Some thoughts on AI and ML in automation. We talked about this long time before, at least 2 years before. There was a video I released on AI in automation testing, and even this year's start, I was telling the recap of the automation testing of 2019. So I told that there was a failure of AI in automation testing for sure. I mean, a lot of people are trying to do something on automation, on the AI department, like trying to resolve the element, because these elements are unpredictable at the moment. I mean, even if you train your AI model to have these relative elements, it is still highly likely, very, very hard to actually have your AI to does support these kinds of operations. So I think at the moment AI is still infant for automation testing, and I don't really see any breakthrough has happened so far. So even testim.io or test.ai, the company claims no harm on them. Still, I don't see a very solid way of doing automation testing. At least they have not even open sourced anything so far. So I don't see any future breakthrough happen at the moment, but we should still wait and see what AI is going to do for us. So what is your opinion on Catalan Studio? I have lost my opinion itself, guys. I'm sorry for that. Catalan Studio was a great tool, but I don't really know what is their idea, what is their plan, because they started off with a free tool. We all believed in that tool. We all went to that tool, but now they are not. They're not free. So there are many paid versions available. It's a good tool for start, but right now it doesn't really. So I probably think I don't know what it is. So yeah, that's what I think my opinion is all about. Future of Tricent is Tosca. I never thought of creating a video on them, but I think if the company approaches to me, probably I can probably create some video, just play around with it, but I have never tried it personally, and I have not even given any thoughts about it. Again, it's a paid tool within our automation videos. I cannot just show a paid tool if I don't really have a license on it. So yeah, I have not given any thoughts. That's the question's answer. So yeah. And there is another question on Appium mobile automation. Is there any way to handle the QR scanners using automation in Appium? So this QR scanner, so is that a QR scanner or the QR code to scan within the Appium? I'm not pretty sure if that's the QR code which you need to scan within the using the Appium. Then probably you should use some image recognition within Appium. And there are many plugins available at the moment in Appium where you can go ahead and search online. I can probably put a link below here. You can actually grab the QR code, and then that resolves the QR code for you, and then you can see what you can do from there within your app. Or the better way, instead of relying on Appium to do it for you, you can ask your developers to get that API which is used for creating the QR code, and then you can use that QR code API to decrypt and use it for your automation testing in Appium, which way it will reduce a tremendous amount of your time. Yeah, that's what I think about it. And there is another question about please suggest a tool to automate Flutter app. I guess in Execute Automation, I have released for the first time the automation testing with Flutter using Flutter driver. I think Flutter driver is the only tool available at the moment on the market to support Flutter application automation. The reason being the Flutter tool itself is from Google, and they don't really have any other way to automate the application. If you see the architecture of Flutter, it is very, very interesting. So basically, the Flutter app runs like an emulated fashion. They create a clean canvas on the native application and devices, and they actually create the native or renders the element on that particular canvas, and then it run it pretty much like a virtual machine running on Mac or a Windows operating system. Similarly, it runs on iOS and Android. That's the reason Flutter app itself is basically a cross-platform, and it runs on multiple different devices without any problem. And that's exactly why you can't actually use Appium with Flutter, because you can actually use you can automate an Xamarin.ui application, or a React application, or like a React native application, or any other application with Appium, but you can't really automate an Flutter driver application. The reason is this, because Flutter actually uses a completely different architecture compared to whatever other technology stack available on the market. So for your question, Mohit, the short answer is Flutter driver. That's the only tool that we can rely on. And I know I have already talked about in the course, in the series which I released, Flutter driver is super buggy, and not a lot of supports are actually available with Flutter driver. Even the repo is kind of very, very bad shape. So yeah, that's what is Flutter driver for us. That's how we can live with for now. So there is no more question at the moment in the live chat. So if you guys have any other, maybe one question or two, that's the maximum I can answer, because we are running short of time already. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to post your questions in the live chat or send me an email at karthik@techgeek.co.in, or just give more time. We are coming up with a new platform pretty soon. It's a great way to actually learn the automation testing in a more sophisticated fashion, and yeah, that's just an overview, that's a heads up of what's going to be happening pretty soon on the new platform. But yeah, that's what is going to be for now. I cannot really reveal at the moment, but we're still working on it. So there is one more question. What is that? Best tool to automate the desktop application? Can we use RPA tool like UiPath for the same? So UiPath, I tried a bit, but UiPath, it seems like it is more like an automation and tool to automate the workflow for business apps, like reading your mail from Outlook, processing it, and putting it on the SharePoint, something like that. So it's like a workflow, right? So you cannot actually use the UiPath to perform an end-to-end automation. I don't think it is really reasonable to use an RPA tool to use it for desktop application automation. Probably it's more like an AutoIt, but please don't use it for the desktop application automation. It doesn't really make any sense. And what is the best CI to use nowadays? I mean, it's not just nowadays, but always. It is Jenkins and Microsoft's Azure DevOps. And yeah, if you have any other tools like TeamCity or Octopus, you can also use that. But yes, these are the tools which is available on the market right now. So yes, that's it. I think this is the whole idea, and we almost talk pretty close to an hour now. And I guess that's the question I have answered so far, and that's the question we have in the live chat as well. So that's it, guys. Once again, thank you so much for joining for today's session. It was really great to see you are spending your time, the two, on the weekend. I hope this session would have really answered some of your questions. If not, just let me know by an email, or maybe post the same link that we have shared already, so that I can probably go and review it back, and we can create one more YouTube live video. But in the next YouTube live video, we are actually going to talk about the BDD with SpecFlow and C# Selenium, because a lot of people are actually asking about how we can actually use Selenium C# with BDD in terms of the context injections, and how we can leverage the SpecFlow's powers and stuff. So I guess it's high time for me to actually talk about that. Probably that's what's going to be the topic for our next YouTube live series. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining. You guys have a great weekend. You have a great Sunday. I know it's pandemic time, you can't go out a lot, but still be safe and be at home as much as possible. Enjoy your time with the family. Once again, thank you very much for joining this session, and you guys have a great day. Bye.